Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Hi, it's Dr. Gemma. Welcome back to Cognitive. This is episode 35, and we are here in the happy studio of Love at Home with the air conditioner blasting, recording on Sunday, July 4th at 4:15 p.m. We don't do much to celebrate the 4th, but I am celebrating this weekend, and I'll get into more of that in the blather. But the really nice news is I managed to get a 3-day weekend, which is something I normally don't do. And for more about that secret event, stick around for the blather. But it's been a nice week, full of unexpected goodness. That was part of it. The other unexpected goodness was that I did not have to serve for jury duty, which I was very concerned about. I got the notice about 2 weeks ago, so I got very short notice. And I really wondered, are they going to select a jury the week before July 4th? And apparently not, is all I can say about that. And I'm very relieved. I checked in every day. It's very interesting, too, and I'll come back with the whole check-in process. But I did not have to serve. I did not get called up. So that was very, very nice. Okay, so let's see what's new. Well, you know that all the show notes are available on our Ravelry group, but also at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. So if you'd like to see the show notes, that's probably going to explain a lot of the things I'm about to say. In the warm thanks department, thank you, Los Angeles County, seriously, for not calling me up for jury duty or making me go down to the courthouse. I can only assume this is the first time in 2 years that we've been open to celebrate a holiday weekend, and everybody working there just took their weekend and didn't want to get involved, and everybody's taking long vacations. I really hope you all are, but thank you. I really appreciate not having to go to court this time. The more distance between me and some of my employment history, if those of you who have been around longer follow my drift, and my serving on a jury that is likely to be a criminal trial, the happier I'm going to be. So that went well. So meanwhile, did I finish anything? What's on my hooks and needles, you must be wondering. I didn't finish anything. Now, in progress, because I thought I was going to serve jury duty in some capacity, I started a crochet project. There's a reason for that. In LA County, they specifically state you cannot bring knitting to a courtroom. And I generally respond by taking crochet, but using a wooden hook. And I have been known to pin the hook up in my hair. That is, to make a bun out of my hair and use the hook to hold it in place and carry a ball of yarn in. And when I get there, I just pull out my hair hook and I crochet. And they've never seemed to mind that. Why am I putting it in my hair? Because one year I went in, this is many years ago now, it has to be at least 10 years ago, and I walked in and I said to the security cop, going through the metal detector, I said, is it okay that I brought crochet and I have a wooden hook? And he said, oh no, that's fine. And this other woman started yelling, no, you can't, you actually can't do that, this security cop. And even the male security cop said, it's not knitting needles and it's not metal. And I said, ma'am, a pencil with a sharpened point would be more dangerous than a blunt piece of wood with a hook. And she freaked out. And he said, well, I don't know if she's right or wrong, but I'm not going to get involved in this. So the answer is no. So ever since then, I've been wearing my crochet hook in my hair, and I've been just fine. Nobody has objected. I've made some pretty nice shawls on jury duty. So this time I pulled out an Apple Tree Knits gradient yarn. This has to be the most mislabeled skein I have ever seen. It says it's a light fingering, it's a lace weight. I got it at Stitches, and they had scribbled all over the label, so I suspect what actually happened, and I don't remember who sold it to me. I don't think it was the original makers of the yarn, but whoever sold it to me, I think they just got caught off guard, and I don't know what they were doing, so I have no idea. This thing seems to be a lace, and it's a pink gradient, and it's very, very pretty. And it says it's a bamboo merino. How would I know? It's a multiply lace. The interesting thing is it's very old. It's from 2014, and the yarn broke in places, which I find odd. It's been sealed in a moth-proof container. There's no evidence of moth damage, except in a few places it's just worn through the wool, and I think it's the bamboo that didn't wear through. So I just keep stopping and starting, and we'll just see how it goes. So this thing should be huge. I mean, I am not very far into the skein, which is caked up, and that might be part of the reason it broke, is the caking puts stress on it. I'm not very far into the cake at all. I'm working my way in from the outside, and I've got a huge amount of shawl already, but I'm really enjoying it. It's a very mindless pattern. It's the Country Cotton Shawl from Lion Brand Yarns. It's a free pattern. This is one of my go-to patterns because it's easily memorized. Most of it is double crochet a stitch and then chain one. Every fifth row, you just do the whole row as double crochets. Interesting thing about it is when you do the double crochet chain one, you double crochet into the previous row's double crochet. You're not putting the crochet stitch into the chain and vice versa, which gives you a very different looking shawl indeed. And I really love these things. I've probably made about 5 or 6 of them. This is one of those amazing patterns. If you have a crochet hook and you have a skein of souvenir yarn that you bought on vacation, this is the pattern you make with it. You buy a souvenir skein of fingering or lace weight, and this pattern is easily memorized. And the link is in the show notes if you'd like to see the pattern. It looks much more complicated than it is. Very, very easy to memorize the pattern because it makes logical sense that when you finish the row, for example, of straight double crochets, and you're transitioning back to double crochet one stitch and then chain one, you could figure out what you have to do to make it work. And the same with, gosh, at the end of each row, how do I do the last stitch so I'm prepared for the next row? How do I do the chaining for the next row? It all makes logical sense. And I'm not going to go into it, but if you crochet it all and you do this pattern, you'll get it right away, how it works. So I'm really enjoying that, which is good because I'm going to be living with this pattern probably for the next 6 months because I have so much yarn. But I'm really enjoying it. It is a pink that goes from a deep pink through into a very snowy white in the center of this enormous ball of God knows how many yards of lace weight yarn. It says it's 700 yards of light fingering. I'm willing to bet it's closer to 1,000 yards of lace. But we will see. And I have to go to Apple Tree's site and look up the yarns and look up their lace weights and see what their typical put up is of a lace weight skein. I think I just got a mislabeled skein. And you know, when people are making ready to go to Stitches West, I'm pretty sure that happens. But it's gorgeous stuff. And by the way, I'm doing it on a D as in dog hook, like a really tiny hook. And I'm loving that. Most hook sets start at E for excitement, not D for dog. That a D hook, usually you have to go to the store and buy a single hook to get something smaller than an E as in excitement. So, yeah, if I were making this over again, I would actually go to an E for excitement hook. But usually when I do fingering weight, I do that on an E hook for this pattern. So I wanted to go smaller, but I don't think it matters all that much. It's beautiful, and I'm really enjoying it. There are a lot of ends to weave in. I'm not really concerned. That's so easy in crochet, it's hardly worth getting your knickers in a twist. Meanwhile, the really pretty socks. I finished a sock. I even did the heel. I was so excited. I had yesterday off, Saturday. I had a Saturday off, the 2nd. And all I did was hang around the house and do projects. So I finished up a chain ply of a beautiful yarn. I started another short gradient yarn, which I'll get to in a second. I did a repeat on the wild lettuce shawl, which is so lovely, and I'm so happy I did, and I'm just going to go do some more today. And then I got to the first of the really pretty socks and said, look, I'm on the toe decreases. Let's just finish this puppy. And I did, and I'm so excited. It's so beautiful. If you look at the picture, I don't even know how to describe the colors. It's multicolor speckling on a gray background, and it's blues and reds and a little bit of yellow, and it's just spectacularly beautiful. And so I got so excited I even did the heel on it. So hopefully tonight I'll start the second sock. Second sock syndrome is not usually a problem for me. I really just get so excited by finishing a sock that I want to get right on to the next one. So here's hoping I do that. So meanwhile, as I said, the wild lettuce shawl, I actually did another repeat. I think I'm 3 repeats away from the midpoint, and I did the count, and everything is landing where it should. So that's very exciting. Twin Face's vest. I talked to Twin Face today. She didn't mention the vest at all. So I don't know where the thing is. I hope it's in transit to me. I'd love to get it finished. We are about 60 days out from our birthday, so it'd be nice to get that finished and get that to her as a birthday present. Oh, the temperature blanket. It's all orange right now. Orange and rouge, which is like a pink red, which is what you get when you go over 100. And orange is the 90s, and caution is the 80s, which is a yellow orange. It's so much fun. It's also now slightly past the halfway point, I'm assuming. That the halfway point was June 30th, and it is caught up, and today, of course, is July 4th. I just did the row for July 3rd last night in blazing orange. Today is in the 80s, so it looks like I'll be switching over to caution for today's stripe. Yes, I laid it on my queen bed, which is where it is intended to go, and took a picture of it. I can't say enough good things about the temperature blanket project. I just like it so much. What I would say is, if you don't want to embark on a whole blanket, and I would quite understand that, you might just do it as a very long scarf. You might do it as a shawl. There's all sorts of ways to do it. I am excited by it, and I'm actually looking forward to doing a different variation for next year, in which I don't pick temperature-related colors at all. In which actually I'm thinking about creams and browns and burgundies and forest greens and letting them randomize in a scarf. Or maybe an infinity cowl. Anyway, the point is, this does not have to be a hard project, but it is a really fun way to randomize colors. And you could get really exotic. You could get the high temperature for a whole year, and then you could randomize by doing the first 12 rows are the first day of every month. Then the second 12 rows are the second of each month, and so on. There's a lot of ways you could play with this to get really interesting randomizations in a range of colors. So, go forth and enjoy. Let's see what else I have for you. Well, Dizzy Blondes, I started telling you, so I'll tell you more. Hooray! I got through the 2 pounds of the Silk BFL from Village Spin and Weave. I have an inexact count there. I've probably got about 400 yards of it. I'm kind of excited because that's looking to me like it might make a pretty nice crop sweater, particularly since I've got another, I don't know how many yards of the blend of silk and camelid, the silk alpaca, the black silk alpaca, and then I have, I think, another 200 or 300 yards of the same silk BFL, but plied against that same silk yak gradient. In other words, I've got some really interesting yarn here, and I may have about, 800 or 900 yards of a worsted weight silk BFL base with various interesting things plied into it. And then I have lots of interesting BFL blend hand spuns that would complement it. And I just did one of these. I had a gradient from Greenwood Fiberworks called Twilight. That was the gradient colorway. And it went from a very red purple through a more deep purple into charcoal gray into a dark teal into a teal blended with charcoal. Oh my gosh, is this pretty. And on the pictures this week in Dizzy Blondes, I just have it sitting on the bobbin after I did a chain ply. Now, I was very concerned. I didn't think my chain plies were coming out well. And then I realized they were. Like, I looked at the last few and said, actually, that's a pretty good chain ply. So I decided to go for it and chain ply this gradient from Greenwood Fiberworks, which is a straight BFL. And it chain plied beautifully. It came off balanced, and it's sitting in the sink soaking. So I don't have a picture of it up this week, but I can't wait to show you it. And I keep thinking, I could make a straight up yoke sweater. And the very neckline, the ribbing at the neckline, would be the straight up silk BFL blend. And then the yoke could be this beautiful gradient from Greenwood Fiberworks. And then I could go down the body in the silk BFL blended with the yak merino as like a single ply of the silk yak merino. And then I could just go to the rest of the straight BFL. It would be a pretty spectacular sweater and definitely a one of a kind. I've always said I have no interest in hand spinning for a sweater. But at this point, I'm looking at this pile of wool and going, hey, this might be that moment, but it's very serendipitous. I certainly didn't plan it. But all the colors are very harmonious with each other because I do tend to work across a very similar palette. I like stained glass, purples, greens, and blues. So, yeah. In the meantime, you can also see I started a beautiful, beautiful braid of royal hair fiber. This is solid BFL superwash, and it's in a color called Bloomfield Blues. Professor Morton Bloomfield of Harvard, very late of Harvard, he died easily 20, 25 years ago. Morton Bloomfield was an early mentor of mine in medieval studies. However, briefly, he helped me to get my first paper published and presented publicly at an international conference. So I was delighted to see this colorway's name. It is deep blues running through blackish blues into greenish blues. It's pretty spectacular. And it's a royal hair braid from way back. I mean, this thing must be from, I would imagine, like 2010. It's $16 for 5 ounces. So, that's the way back machine. It's beautiful, and I'm really enjoying it. I've got 2/3 of it spun. One of the really likable things was this was 3 short braids braided together into one. So also it's already divided into thirds. So that's what I'm doing. I'm tearing apart each braid. It's a bit compressed, so I'm pre-drafting. And I've already got 2 of the 3 little braids spun, and they're probably about 1.7 ounces each. And they're taking up 2 of my bobbins. And I'm just about to start the 3rd braid, which I've already pre-drafted into thin strips. So I'm very excited about that. Okay, on to strategy. Now, I've been talking about mindfulness and I've been talking about radical acceptance, which are 2 concepts that run side by side. By the way, I wanted to thank everybody who's written in and thanked me for the recent strategies. I've gotten a lot of email that says straight up, I really like what you're doing with the strategies. You're welcome. I do too. It's a little more organized than I used to do it, and it's very fun to work through all the various takes on dialectical behavioral therapy, which is, of course, my approach of choice these days. And so it's been a lot of fun. And so when you get into radical acceptance, I'm talking about radical acceptance this time around. I've talked about it a few times. And I've been talking about it this time from the perspective of, now that we've done some strategies, let's go back to radical acceptance, which is how you do this type of therapies. You keep coming back to mindfulness and radical acceptance. And last week, after talking about everyday acceptance, which is just to realize life ain't fair, that's the short version, I went back to radical acceptance, and I talked about when you start from the premise of life isn't fair, everyday acceptance, and when you get into a bad situation, you say, all right, so what is the bad situation? I'm accepting it because life isn't fair. So instead now I can move on to what choices do I have? Instead of demanding that life be fair or people do what I want when I'm not going to get that, once you get into a kind of acceptance frame of mind, you become freed up to look at your choices. So what are your choices? What would each choice do for me? In other words, what are the pros and cons, which is a concept we should come back to as well. What would the best choice be? And then I have to accept that choice, even with its losses, even if it's not perfect. You just say, that's all I'm going to really get, and that's really hard to come to that place. But at the basis of this is another concept that is, I wasn't going to say it, but I was running through my notes and I found it and I said, no, I really should. What I'm really assuming here is that you are ready to take hold of your own mind. And normally, I want to believe if you come to therapy that you are. That's why you came to therapy. Except that's not true. A lot of people come to therapy and they basically say, hi, I'm in therapy because I want you to change the way my partner, mother, spouse, father, cousin, whatever, boss behaves. Boy, when I did workers' compensation, that was virtually every session. I'm angry because my boss hurt me, my boss is unfair, make them change. And that's one of the great struggles when you go into that type of therapy, is helping the patient to realize that even if they were wronged by their employment situation, they still are going to have to change back from the person who was wronged and feels helpless to a person who can feel more in charge of their situation. So, and often they would come to therapy thinking the therapy was for me to change their boss in some way. It makes sense in the context, and so, again, you can't always assume people are coming into therapy because they believe they need to change. But the reality is, if you're in therapy, you are agreeing to change, that you go to therapy to change yourself, not to change someone else. While that seems very obvious and straightforward, it really isn't. People really struggle a lot with that. So at the basis of all the therapy I do, I am assuming that the person engaging in therapy is ready or wants to be ready to take hold of their own mind. And there isn't going to be radical acceptance or mindfulness until you say, I am going to take hold of my mind to make change. Now here's the exciting thing. Where does change even come from? Well, it's really straightforward. If a person has a problem, you can change two things. You can change the person with the problem, or rather they can change themselves, or they or you can try to change their environment. Now, that's where the workers' comp thing becomes obvious, right? You see people come into therapy and they think they're in therapy and they're going to tell you what the problem is and you're going to somehow go back and change their environment, which is not what therapy is. Therapy is usually not for changing an outside environment. The exception is if you have someone who is severely unable to change, shall we say. I want to be careful how I say that too, because I don't want to give the impression that I'm saying that someone who needs their environment changed is necessarily severely impaired. That's why I'm trying to be kind of careful here what I say. So, have some patience with me there. But there are situations where you have a person who's doing pretty well, but they can only do so well. And so at that point, you have to start looking at changing their environment. Here's the easy example. My kid is allergic to dogs, and I take my kid to therapy, and they have a therapy dog. Well, you know what? You can't change the kid's allergy to the dog. So you're going to have to change the environment. Either the kid's going to have to get therapy in a place where the allergens from the therapy dog are not present, or the kid's going to have to wear a respirator to therapy to be in a place where there's a therapy dog. So that's a really straightforward example without implying any kind of severe disability on the kid's part. It's just simply an environmental change has to happen. Okay, and you do see a lot of that. Situations where you say, we have to change the environment. So you have somebody with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and they've been, let's say they've been in a car accident, and they're sitting in your office, and you hear tires screeching on the freeway outside your office frequently. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be able to do therapy in that office. So again, there are situations where you have to change the environment. But most of the time, if you are able to do therapy under your own steam and you're able to select a therapist and you've got insurance and all that, so in other words, you're functional, you go to therapy, you're going to have to change, which means you have to do something to change, to get radical acceptance, to get mindfulness. You will have to change a behavior. And we get a variation on that. People come in, I've gotten this a lot where they say, look, I'm just depressed. And I say, yeah, well, that's fairly serious, actually. And they go, no, you don't understand. I'm not going to change. I don't want to do therapy. Just get me a pill. And I'll say, I'm not that kind of doctor. And they'll say, I know, but my psychiatrist is requiring that I see you, but I'm not going to do therapy. I'm just doing this because my psychiatrist is saying I have to do this. I have to check out therapy. Okay, I've checked it out. Now, at that point, this is the old, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it sit in your chair and be psychoanalyzed. In other words, you can't make it drink. And that's fine. I will say you are aware that the psychiatrist may ask to talk to me, and I will simply say, this is your choice. And you get different responses. I mean, some patients go, I know. And some patients get really angry at you, whatever. Okay, so there is a variation where people say, I just have a problem and I just want to take a pill. And they take the pill. Now, they actually are changing their behavior to take the pill. And that may be enough. There are people that certainly works for. So I'm not criticizing that. But, when a psychiatrist takes the time to send somebody to me, it tells me the psychiatrist is thinking there are some associated problematic behaviors that the patient's going to want to reflect upon and maybe change. So the point of all this is, before you get any of this stuff, you have to realize that you're committing to taking hold of your own mind, of changing the way you think. That is, you're going to now practice directing your mind to go where you want it to go and to do what you want it to do. So I often see things on Facebook where people say, oh, I'm depressed, please, here's the wrong way to do therapy with me. Don't tell me I need to work on my depression. I'm really helpless. And those kind of memes make me a little crazy. I understand where they're coming from. And that is sometimes true. Sometimes it's like, yep, you're not ready to do therapy. You're right, But at the same time, I feel like it often sends the wrong message, because I think at the end of all recovery, you're facing the fact that you recover by changing behavior and you recover by changing your mind. You may use medication to do that. You may use medication in therapy. You may use only therapy. But at the end of the day, the strategy of the week is, look, if you're doing all these things I'm talking about, you have to go to a deeper level and accept that to do the kind of strategies a psychologist or a mental health therapist talks to you about is going to involve believing that you are in charge of your mind. You can take hold of it. You can change it. Your problems are mostly occurring in your own head. Now, that doesn't mean you lack real problems. What it means is you can't deal with your real world problems until you take hold of your head. If you're freaking out, you can't manage your problems. If you're calm, you can manage your problems. So at the end of the day, you have to sort of open your mind to the idea of, I'm going to take charge in here. I'm going to sort of clean things up in here. I may allow myself to look through certain windows of my mind, so to speak, while keeping other windows shut. I may selectively work on changing certain aspects. But I am going to take charge of my head. And that means if I'm having painful thoughts on a topic, I'm going to learn to manage them. And if my thoughts are organized and calm, and it's sort of a set of painful thoughts blow into my mind, I don't have to look at them. I don't have to think about them. I can silence them and I can push them away. And that's the ultimate in mindfulness. So that was very abstract, and I apologize for being a little out there on this one. But really what I'm saying is the core of all strategies is you must take hold of yourself by taking hold of your mind. And there are various ways: meditation, mindfulness, medication, yoga. There are all sorts of ways, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to take hold of your mind to take hold of yourself. Put a lid on it. Well, the boys got stuck in a traffic jam from a very sad accident up here in Acton on the freeway. And they couldn't get home, that the freeway was closed for hours. I believe this was Friday. Yes. So there I was, home alone, finished seeing my patients, didn't have to do jury duty. So, I did what any red-blooded knitter would do. I cooked. I made myself buttered chicken because that's what I had the stuff to make, and the chicken was thawed. And I then decided to make chai to go with it. Now, of course, I'm eating keto, so forget the veg. I had this pound of chicken, like these 3 enormous chicken breasts my husband had brought home from Aldi Market, and I just cooked one of them in the butter sauce. Oh, heavens, that's good stuff. And tonight, in fact, I'm cooking the other 2 in the remaining sauce, even as we speak. But I decided I need hot spiced chai, hot spiced Indian tea to go with it. And I took Urvashi's recipe from her Indian Instant Pot, Urvashi Petra, or Peter, I don't know how she pronounces her last name. But anyway, I took her masala chai recipe, and instead of cooking it in an Instant Pot, which you can, throw everything in there, cook for 1 minute, I just decided to cook it on the stovetop, and it was perfectly good. The recipe is in the show notes, but basically I took a saucepan and I put in 3 tea bags. Now, I happen to like Twining's Earl Grey. I like a very powerful push when I make chai. I like the tea to have its own heavy flavor. You can also try like a breakfast tea bag with 2 tea bags of Darjeeling. I find Darjeeling tea has a little too much of a kind of acidy edge on it for me, so I don't usually drink Darjeeling straight up. But Darjeeling kind of mediated or triple plied, as it were, chain plied with another tea bag. 2 Darjeelings, 1 English breakfast works pretty well for me. But anyway, I happen to like Twining's Earl Grey. And then 3 tea bags, and then 2 cups of water. Now, I'm keto, so I use half a cup of heavy cream. A lot of people would reduce the water a little bit, like maybe 1.5 cups, and use a cup of regular milk, full-fat milk. Please don't use skim milk. You want fat in this. Really, give it some flavor. But anyway, 3 tea bags, 2 cups water, half cup heavy cream. I use 2 teaspoons of Swerve, which is my sweetener, 2 whole cloves, 3 cinnamon sticks, and these things about 3 inches long. You don't need 6-inch sticks for this. A tablespoon of minced ginger. Minced fresh is the best. However, I use a minced dried ginger I get from Penzeys in a jar that I love. A half teaspoon of fennel seeds. And this one definitely from Penzeys, 4 green cardamom pods. Oh, what a flavor. You really need the cardamom, trust me. So just put this all together on the stove and warm it. And I let it come just to boiling. You don't really want to boil cream or milk. So I'll let it just hit little fine bubbles on the edge of the pan. And then I turn it off and I will let it steep for about 3 to 5 minutes. Then I strain this into mugs and I love it. So that is masala chai. If you've never had a good Indian chai, you've been missing something. And you can really mess with the spices here based on what you like. This one is pretty much it for me. I'm trying to think, there's one other spice and I can see it in my imagination. I can't think what it's called that would also go well in this. Oh well, you'll make it up. Oh shoot. Well, the Fit Desk. 3 weeks of fit desking. I've gotten past 150 miles total. It keeps an odometer. And you can see my mileage. I rode Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I don't think I rode Tuesday. I don't think I was feeling really good Tuesday. But I did pretty well. So I bagged, what is that, about 28, 29 miles this week. So that was pretty nice. I wasn't feeling high energy, but I enjoyed it. So you can see my Fit Desk odometer pictures. I'm not going to hide it. I'm really proud of the Fit Desk thing. That it's gone so well. It's gone so well. It's been amazing. And the idea of, oh heavens, I'm biking 30 miles a week at work is great. 1 or 2 patients have noticed the moving from side to side. I don't know if they know I'm biking. One figured it out because I'd mentioned something about getting a Fit Desk. But I'm not sure what they think I'm doing. The real wonderful thing is towards the end of it, I usually just use the Fit Desk in the afternoons. In the morning, I sit in my study. But in the afternoons, I'm using the Fit Desk. And I start standing more and more. And I just love that. I feel so much better at the end of the day not sitting for 6 hours. It makes all the difference in the world. So even if I'm not biking, just using it as a standing desk, which occasionally I will hop up and sit on the bike seat, even if I'm not pedaling, although usually once I'm on the bike seat, I start pedaling. What a difference this makes. So I can't recommend this enough. I thought I was going to be saying things like it's my new toy and I'd lose interest in it, but we're still going strong after 3 weeks. And they say 30 days makes a habit, so I'm really hoping. Fluffy books. Well, I am reading Kindred by Rebecca Ragg Sykes. Not as exciting as it was in the beginning, because there are chapters where she has to do things like, let's talk about every single tooth in every single extant Neanderthal skull. Okay, I have to admit I skipped a few pages there. I've been listening to it mostly on Audible, but I've also been reading it. It's good. You have to hang in the very beginning when she gets obsessive about bodily features on the extant skeletons and skulls. When she gets into culture, it gets really, really interesting for me. It's impossible to avoid comparing it to early Homo sapiens. And I'm really looking forward to her discussion of interbreeding between the two subspecies. It's going to be very, very interesting. I like the way also she avoids negative language that often gets associated with Neanderthals, and she also refigures them in positive language. Like she talks about their head shape being aerodynamic and streamlined compared to our head shape. It's very interesting. So, it's not hot, pulse-pounding excitement, but it's a very good, solid book, and I'm just enjoying it as good nonfiction. It's a very long book, but that's okay. So I will listen to about an hour of it a couple times a day when I'm doing other things, and I've been enjoying it. Meanwhile, I finished Evans Above by Rhys Davis, which is the first in her Constable Evans series, and it's good. It's a cozy mystery set in the high country around Mount Snowdon in Wales. I can't pronounce the actual Welsh name of Snowdon, so I apologize for using the Anglo-Saxon name. But anyway, it's a good book. I enjoyed it. It's fun. It is much better listened to on Audible than read, because it is delightful to hear the narrator using the Welsh terminology. It is delightful to listen to Welsh again, in my humble opinion. And I've moved on to the second book in the series, Heaven Help Us. Just one heaven pun after another in these titles. And I'm enjoying Heaven Help Us quite a lot. Heaven Help Us is a very interesting thing. It's a locked room mystery, except the room is a whole village. So it's just a lot of fun. And I'm enjoying that. So those are my fluffy books. Something I really like, when you look at the picture, you're going to go, what is that thing? What it is one of those stupid things you buy in the checkout line. In this case, it is a stand for a cell phone. That's all it is. It is a disc that lies on your desktop, and on the top of the disc, there is a little rotating disc, and that disc is carved down the middle with a groove for your cell phone. Currently, I have my handheld recorder in it, and that's why you're not probably hearing all the noises you hear as I hold the recorder in my hand and rub it and make odd accidental noises into the microphone. So I did not buy the stand for the handheld microphone. It does not perfectly fit it, but it fits it well enough. It sort of sits on the top of the groove just enough to stay balanced. But I have to admit, I have enjoyed having my cell phone in this stand on my desk while I'm talking to patients on Zoom or on Doxy.me on my tablet. It's nice to have the cell phone there because I do get messaged all day long, and I do want to make sure there's no crisis messaging going on. And so it's kind of the price you pay for doing what I do in the age of the cell phone. You want to give your patient your full attention, but you also don't want to miss emergencies. So there it is, a picture of my rotating stand for my iPhone. I've been toying with the idea of getting a tripod and all sorts of other stands you see online. This thing was $3.99 in the checkout. I think I bought it at Joann Fabrics. And I'm really happy with it. It's just one of those dumb little things. Blather. Well, all right. So, I didn't have to do jury duty. That's the big news. Have I mentioned that I didn't have to do jury duty? Why, Gemma, only about 15 times so far. And this left me in a couple interesting positions. First off, I started the jury duty shawl so that I would have something I could crochet on with a wooden crochet hook in the courtroom. Well, still have the shawl, don't have the jury duty. I'm grateful. I'm very, very grateful. So I'm just working away on the shawl. Let's see, the picture I have, I look like I'm about 17 rows in. Now I'm more about 26 rows in, and the rows get quite a bit longer. This is one of those projects, it's like knitting a sock. You just pick it up when you have a minute or two, and it doesn't take a lot of thought, and you just work away on it. And I must say, I thought the very small hook, particularly as I age and my eyesight isn't quite what it used to be, would be a problem. Not at all. But I have to tell you, this is a great pattern, as I just said before. And if you want to make a shawl, this is a pattern. Pick the right hook, pick the right yarn. Doesn't matter the size, big or small. This is one of those wonderful patterns. If you're a crocheter, I can't recommend it enough. It's up there with the Calm Cowl in my list of you always want to have this on your mind, because you can instantly whip out what you want in terms of shawl or cowl with it. But anyway, I'm doing the jury duty shawl even though I don't have jury duty. Meanwhile, because I didn't have jury duty, I wasn't going to take a holiday. Now, again, I'm in a private practice. We're newly organized into a group within the last year or two. We're still working out all the bugs. One of the bugs for me is I don't work on Mondays. My weekend is Sunday and Monday, which I used to hate. I used to hate working on Saturdays. Now I love working on Saturdays. I don't get disturbed on Saturdays. The boys go out and play. There's nobody in the office. So whether I'm working at home or working in the office, I'm not getting a stream of messages and emails. Doing my job from home on a Saturday is delightful. It is much, much better than working on Mondays from home and having a stream of interrupting emails and messages from the office while I'm trying to talk to patients, and they're on their work week and they're messaging me in between their breaks at work, blah, blah, blah. Much easier to work on a Saturday. However, I realized on Memorial Day that I did not work out what happens to my holidays. And I don't believe I was paid for Memorial Day, even though it was a holiday. And I realized that's on me, that the boss gives me a lot of independence, and I really like my boss, and I really like my job. But I thought, there's a lot of balls in the air since California changed its law about contracting, that a lot of what's been going on for everybody who contracts or used to contract, all the people I know who do massage therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, mental health therapy, we're all still working out these rules. It was not immediately obvious what the changes implied. So I finally realized I've got to do something about the Monday holidays. So I wrote in and they said, no, sure, we're going to pay you for July 4th. And I thought, that's great. I'll work a 5-day week and I'll get paid for this extra day. And then I thought, I'm not even sure how legal that is. What we used to do when I was in the agency world was if you had a Monday off for something else, and then you had a Monday holiday, you just took another day off for the Monday holiday. Well, I was going to take one of my jury duty days and use the July 4th pay for that, but then I didn't have to go to jury duty, so I worked all last week. And so when I realized Thursday night, it said, congratulations, you don't have to report tomorrow either. That was my 5th day of not having to report. You've completed your jury duty obligation. And I woke up the next morning and said, it's Friday. My patients are canceling today, and a bunch of them are canceling tomorrow, July 3rd. And I went, why am I working on Saturday if my patients are canceling and I have this paid day? So I did a kind of wildcat strike. Friday morning I wrote in and said, hey, cancel all my patients. I'm going to take tomorrow off. And I canceled them with them. I explained to them, okay, I didn't have to do jury duty, so I have this day off. And I thought I could take Saturday or I could take Tuesday. And I thought, well, it'd be a lot of fun to take Saturday, because I never get Saturdays off anymore. It'd be fun to be home with my son. So I did. So today is Sunday, July 4th, and I'm on the 2nd day of my 3-day weekend. And actually just having that extra 24 hours has made a world of difference. I'm so much more relaxed this weekend. I'm really, really enjoying it. So there we are. I'm on a 3-day holiday, and today is day 2, and I still have tomorrow, and I feel really excited about that. Speaking of really excited, I've been following a group called Cook's Collies, as in too many cooks spoil the broth. Can't think of another way to say it. Cook's Collies is run by Amy and Steve Cook in Kansas, in Elk Falls, Kansas, in fact. And the interesting thing about this is they breed collies, but they're not a puppy mill. They started with really good blood stock from good kennels, and instead of going for show quality collies, they breed pet quality. But collies are prone to a lot of genetic problems, as Eleanor's lupus shows, and so what they do is they breed for good genetics, not good show quality. Well, it turns out Eleanor is one removed from Cook's, that her grandparents were Cook's dogs, and I don't know who her breeder bred them with. They were okay dogs. But anyway, Eleanor has what I think is a genetic deficiency. Collies get lupus, and she's got it. And she's in great shape. Vet's really happy. She's really happy. She's feeling good. So that's all good. So I decided that one of the outcomes of this was I looked at Eleanor, who's 9, and does have lupus, and then Blankets, who is 13 or 14, I believe. And my husband said, we could do one more dog. I mean, we really could. We could start a puppy. We're still in our early 60s. And I said, you're right. So I've been following several different possibilities. And, Cook's breeds several litters per year. They breed really responsibly. They have no problem placing their dogs. They've got a great track record. Anyway, Amy Cook sent me pictures of a bunch of her male puppies. I don't want a male because Eleanor isn't going to take that. Eleanor's very alpha. But I thought it really woke me up to, I want another puppy. Maybe not this year, but it's going to happen. So anyway, I ended up putting down a deposit with Cook's. And I'm kind of excited about that, I have to be honest. So we have a puppy deposit down with Cook's Collies. And we'll see how that works out. But that's the excitement of the day. And Minerva, of course, gets the last word. There's a picture of her sound asleep on the roving that I'm currently spinning, which is the Royal Hare, the beautiful BFL from Royal Hare. And one of the things I have learned, thank you Minerva, from working in a lot of BFL roving recently, is that I chain ply just great, and I chain ply pure wool really well. That when I've had problems with chain plying, it's usually because it's been a mix and it's not as easily managed on the spin as the wheel is moving as wool is, to be honest. So yeah, I could use more practice chain plying silks and various blends, but I'm chain plying just great. So meanwhile, Minerva wants to help me spin, which means she often tries to bite the wool when I'm plying. She bites the plies as they're feeding into the wheel. And a lot of times it's more jealousy than anything else. She just wants attention. So you can see her there. I let her just fall asleep on the roving because what you can't see is just to the bottom left corner of the picture are my feet as I sit there spinning at my eel wheel. And Minerva is really just trying to be companionable. She's trying to be with me. So there you go, Minerva having a nap on my wool. And I think that's going to wind it up today. I hope this has been fairly noise-free because of using the iPhone holder. And meanwhile, here in LA County, the county is now recommending we go back to wearing masks in public. It's not mandated yet. In restaurants, most of the staff wear masks. Some of them don't. I'm not sure what the rule is. Most of them are wearing the masks, though, below their noses, which means, in other words, while they may look idiotic with a mask over their mouth, they're actually doing no good whatsoever. So, LA County, we're not too bright. That's all I can tell you. I'm still wearing my mask in public because children under the age of 12 cannot be vaccinated. And I happen to like children under the age of 12. But also, the news is mostly about us who got vaccinated. Fauci announced yesterday, I think, that 99.1% of the people who are hospitalized for COVID are unvaccinated. In other words, that's where the deaths are going. Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Moderna have all said they've got 90% security against you being hospitalized for one of the new variants, even Delta. And if you do get hospitalized, 95% survival rate. So that's all pretty good. And apparently, unfortunately, the new variants are really just ripping through the ranks of the unvaccinated. I'm listening to people have opinions about that. And most of the opinions are, well, they volunteered for this and they're getting it. They said they weren't going to get vaccinated. It was all a hoax. And now they're in the hospital. I know. It's hard for me to work up a lot of sympathy for people who have been foolish for the last 15 months. However, 1% of them are just bad luck cases where they got vaccinated and it didn't work. Also, last I heard, 25% of the cases that are hospitalized are children. However, that doesn't necessarily mean they're children under the age of 12 who could not be vaccinated. So remember when you hear those statistics, there's more to them than just the foolish are now paying the price. But also remember, whatever spiritual tradition you're from, I'm pretty sure compassion is a part of it. Okay, I can't help myself. And if anybody deserves your compassion, it's got to be people who are so stupid. Okay, never mind. At any rate, please consider continuing to wear your mask for the sake of children under the age of 12. And because we do have variants, and we don't know quite enough about the risk there. But at any rate, if you're wearing a mask, you're less likely to get a cold or pass your cold to someone else, or to get flu. So wear your mask. Have another winter without being sick. Get through the summer surge of COVID or whatever other diseases are coming at us by wearing a mask and not being sick. I mean, what have you got to lose, right? We're all used to what people look like in masks. And in the meantime, don't forget, wash your hands, socially distance, get your vaccine, finish up your shots if you haven't yet. And all of this is so that you will stay safe, take care of each other, and I get to talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.